All right, let's kick off this explainer with a number that is just absolutely staggering. 2.5 lakh crore rupees. That is the massive annual chemical fertilizer subsidy burden currently shouldered by the Indian government. Honestly, it's a huge macroeconomic and ecological problem. For decades, our intensive agricultural systems have relied heavily on these subsidized synthetic chemicals. But it's literally draining the national exchequer and pulling valuable public capital away from long-term, yield-enhancing structural investments. We absolutely have to solve this.
So welcome everyone. Today we're diving into a really fascinating look at how the Indian government is executing a massive policy shift to fix this exact problem. They are steadily moving away from chemical-intensive agriculture by reviving ancient traditional farming practices. It's just a brilliant example of how we can look back into our history to solve the very modern climate and fiscal crises of today.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the chemical crisis, traditional agrarian wisdom, the NMNF initiative, subsidies and incentives, fiscal and ecological goals, and finally, restoring soil for the future.
Okay, Section 1. The chemical fertilizer crisis. Let's set the stage.
To really understand the solution, we first need to grasp the immense fiscal and ecological drain caused by decades of chemical agriculture. Here's a stark comparison. On one side, you've got the reality of chemical farming. It degrades soil health, drops the soil pH to alarming levels, pollutes our groundwater, and again, costs the nation over 2.5 lakh crore rupees every single year. But then, on the flip side, natural farming offers this brilliant alternative. We're talking zero external chemical inputs, low out-of-pocket costs, and methods deeply rooted in traditional ancestral knowledge, making it highly accessible, especially for small and marginal landholders.
Moving right along to Section 2, Traditional Indian Agrarian Wisdom.
What is truly fascinating here is how the solution to this highly modern, complex economic crisis is deeply rooted in traditional Indian agrarian history and cultural wisdom. Let's define natural farming in the Indian context. Now, it's important to clarify that this isn't just organic farming, which, often still relies on purchased off-farm inputs. Instead, this is a very specific return to ancestral Hindu agrarian values centered around the reverence and practical utility of the indigenous desi cow. By integrating local livestock, utilizing multi-cropping, and ensuring continuous soil cover, farmers can completely eliminate their dependence on expensive synthetic chemicals.
A crucial pillar of this traditional wisdom is something called Jivamrut. This is an ancient formulation that is actually being scientifically validated today as a replacement for expensive synthetic fertilizers. It's prepared entirely on-farm using the dung and urine of indigenous cows, some jaggery, pulse flour, and just a handful of undisturbed soil. Actually, as a quick aside, if any of you are looking for an incredibly cool, hands-on biofertilizer experiment for a school-level environmental science project, creating a batch of Jivamrut is literally the perfect way to witness how microbial activity can naturally revive soil health.
We also have Bijamrut, which acts as a completely natural seed treatment. This beautifully illustrates how traditional Hindu agrarian values utilized local biological resources to protect seeds from soil-borne and seed-borne pathogens, entirely without resorting to toxic synthetic fungicidal chemicals. It is low cost, it's highly effective, and it's completely ecologically safe.
All right, Section 3, the National Mission on Natural Farming. Let's dive into how the government is stepping in.
The government is actively institutionalizing these traditional practices on a massive, nationwide scale. And this timeline shows the steady evolution of these initiatives. It didn't happen overnight. They started back in 2015 with the PKVY, which was a comprehensive organic program. By 2019, they introduced the BPKP as a sub-scheme specifically focused on natural farming. And then, recognizing the vital need to really scale this up, the Union Cabinet approved the National Mission on Natural Farming, or NMNF, in November 2024 as a fully standalone, centrally sponsored scheme.
So the most crucial point here is the sheer scale and ambition of this mission. The NMNF aims to implement natural farming in 15,000 gram panchayat clusters. The goal? To ultimately reach 1 crore farmers across 7.5 lakh hectares. To support this massive transition, the national budget has dedicated an outlay of 2,481 crore rupees. A huge part of this budget goes directly toward establishing 10,000 bio-input resource centers, which ensures farmers have direct, local access to ready-to-use natural inputs.
Which brings us to Section 4, Subsidies and Farmer Incentives.
We have to acknowledge that transitioning away from chemicals can be incredibly risky for a smallholder farmer whose entire livelihood depends on their next harvest. So, to de-risk this process, the government is literally paying farmers via direct benefit transfers to adopt natural farming. Look at these incentives. Under the NMNF, farmers receive an output-based incentive of 4,000 rupees per acre per year for 2 years. This financial cushion is absolutely critical. It helps with livestock upkeep, preparing natural inputs, and compensating them for attending training sessions while their soil transitions.
So how does a farmer actually execute this? Well, it's structured into specific steps. First, they join a local 50-hectare cluster. Step 2, they receive specialized training from extension networks like the Krishi Vigyan Kendras. Third, if they don't own cattle, no problem. They can purchase inputs directly from those local bio-input resource centers we just mentioned. Finally, they get their produce certified through the peer-reviewed participatory guarantee system. This allows them to access premium markets without paying exorbitant third-party certification fees.
Let's move to Section 5, PM, PRNM, and Fiscal Goals.
This is where we see how these local, on-the-ground agricultural shifts tie directly into national fiscal targets and climate-resilient farming schemes. The PM Pranam scheme is basically a policy masterstroke. It directly incentivizes state governments to reduce their chemical fertilizer use. How? Well, if a state consumes less chemical fertilizer, they save the central government money, right? The center then takes 50% of those savings and hands it right back to the state as a grant. But here is the brilliant catch. 95% of that grant must be used to fund sustainable, climate-resilient agriculture. It's a system that actively shifts massive budget allocations away from chemical subsidies and directly into ecological farming.
Finally, Section 6, Restoring Soil for the Future.
The ultimate question we have to ask is, does this return to ancient wisdom actually work for modern socioeconomic needs and for future generations? Well, the socioeconomic proof is practically undeniable. According to the Niti Aayog's evaluation report, 91.2% of farmers reported increased crop productivity. An astounding 91.1% reported a significant reduction in their production costs, mostly because they just aren't buying expensive synthetic chemicals anymore. Plus, 68.5% visually reported improved soil health. It's a massive win for the farmer's wallet and a win for the earth.
And the scientific data totally backs up what the farmers are observing. Multi-location research trials by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research confirm these long-term ecological benefits. They consistently found rising soil organic carbon levels and richer, much more balanced microbial communities. This proves that these traditional methods are actively healing the soil, repairing the damage done by decades of heavy chemicals, and securing incredibly fertile ground for future generations of farmers. And to ensure this knowledge isn't just some passing trend, the government is embedding these practices directly into higher education. Agricultural university students are actively engaging with the MNF right now through the Rawe program and through dedicated diploma courses. We are quite literally teaching the next generation of agronomists how to farm in harmony with nature.
All of this brilliantly illustrates that natural farming isn't about moving backward. It's about moving forward sustainably. The future of this movement seamlessly blends the ancient with the highly modern. Think about it. We have bio-input resource centers sourcing rich bioslurry from local Govardhan biogas plants, and then utilizing the Namo Drone Didi scheme, women's self-help groups are flying high-tech agricultural drones to spray these natural, ancient liquid fertilizers directly onto the crops. It is literally ancient wisdom delivered by modern drones.
I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. We've seen the data, the policies, and the ancient wisdom in action. By integrating our deep, traditional Hindu agrarian roots with structured modern technological policies, can we permanently heal our soil, reduce our massive subsidy burdens, and secure a true climate-resilient future? Looking at the evidence, it certainly seems like the blueprint is already in motion. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.